A number of people have asked over time, well, haven't there been any great women thinkers or philosophers? And the answer is yes, there have been. So there are 3 on this May through August schedule. One of which you may have heard of, and probably the other 2 you probably haven't heard of, because Western philosophy and religion hasn't been too good at putting women forward. And the other thing is that I'm teaching a class called the Enduring Questions on Wednesday evenings, only from 7 to 8 p.m. at the right near the college. And if you're interested in that, you can pick up a flyer. It looks like this, also in the back. That's 12 Wednesdays in a row, every Wednesday night for 12 Wednesdays. And these talks only happen the first 2 Fridays of each month here. And the other thing I'd like to mention, if you haven't been here before and think you might want to come back, is there's a book back there where you can put your name and email address and or phone number, and then that will enable you to be informed or reminded ahead of time that there's a talk occurring. You'll automatically get an email. If you have an email address, you'll get called if you leave a phone number. It also gives us a way to contact you in the event that one of these things gets canceled, so you don't have to come and find the doors locked. And the other thing I was asked to mention, which I would typically forget, we don't charge anything for these lectures. There's a donation thing back there, but part of the reason there's a donation thing back there is because we actually have to pay to use this room. It's not all just greed. Yeah. So that's, I think, covers it. The topic tonight is ceaseless dissolution. And I'll just start by reading a quotation from the Buddha, which is one line. He says, "The world is like a burning house that is forever being destroyed and forever being rebuilt." The world is like a burning house that's forever being destroyed and forever being rebuilt. And this idea of ceaseless dissolution, it sounds perhaps initially, if you just look at the topic, it sounds perhaps slightly negative, like you mean everything's just falling apart endlessly. And so that's not really what it means. There's no board to write on here, but there's a Sanskrit word that we need to kind of have here. It's called pralaya, P-R-A-L-A-Y-A. And it basically means, there are different kinds of pralayas, but it's kind of like when something stops happening and something else hasn't started yet. So in between, there's what they call a pralaya. It's kind of like nothing's happening. And it's a Hindu concept. And if you ever study Hindu thought, in any detail, you'll come across notions of pralayas that are, you'll come across, for example, the notion that the entire universe that we know about, which obviously exists, at some point won't exist, and there'll be a pralaya where nothing at all exists. And then there'll be it'll start happening again, it'll emanate again, and there'll be another one happening for how many hundreds of millions of years. So they go that far with this idea of pralaya. The pralaya in between universes they call mahapralaya. But there's a pralaya between waking and going to sleep and waking up too, kind of, a deep sleep. So pralaya is just when something's ended and whatever's beginning hasn't begun yet. And we're not going to talk about pralaya really here, but we need to have the word out to discuss ceaseless dissolution, because they have these different pralayas that they talk about in Hindu metaphysics. And the one that always struck me as the most intriguing. Why, I couldn't tell you, because they have all these different pralayas. But the one that always got my attention was one they called Nitya, Nitya, Nitya Pralaya. And that's the concept that everything is coming into being and going out of being all the time simultaneously. There's absolutely nothing permanent. That there's constant dissolution and constant, not creation, but coming into being. And that's called Nitya Pralaya. And it's an interesting concept. It's probably 10,000 years old. And it pretty much coincides with what's a certain amount of what's going on in certain areas of physics now, where they're starting to realize that the world that appears to us as stable, actually, from the standpoint of, say, subatomic physics, isn't stable at all. And even what we call atoms aren't stable. Subatomic particles aren't stable. That are coming in and going out of being ceaselessly. And somehow all of this world that we live in that seems so solid and real is composed of these things that are coming in and going out of existence in terms of nanoseconds. So we live in a world, to say that we live in a world of change is putting it mildly. It's very difficult, this idea of ceaseless dissolution. It's difficult to comprehend if we're looking at whatever it is we think is ceaselessly dissolving. If we're looking at it from a physical plane point of view, then it makes no sense. So the concept of ceaseless dissolution doesn't really primarily refer to obvious physical plane phenomena. In any obvious sense, not in the way we go through our day, because things kind of stay the same, people kind of stay the same. Most of us would probably think this is the same room we were in the last time we were here. So in terms of sense experience, the ceaseless dissolution doesn't make too much sense. And what the sages say, and most of this comes from various sages, ancient Indian sages. What the sages say is that the ceaseless dissolution is happening on very subtle planes of matter. They're saying the same thing 10,000 years ago that physics is just beginning to say now. That on very subtle planes of matter, there's ceaseless dissolution, which is, if you're into Buddhist thought, which I know some of you are, this would have a correlation to the idea of no inherent. Nothing has any inherent identity. Everything's in flux. All of our idea of permanence, all of our idea of things, all of our ideas of persons, these are all, from the standpoint of reality, illusions, based upon sense perception, based upon having words for things. So then we start thinking that we know what something is because we have a word for it. And then it lasts through time, so the idea of ceaseless dissolution doesn't make too much sense to us. But if we think about it, the idea we live in a world of constant change, and it's all cyclic. And we all know this in a very simple. We all know this in simple ways, like day and night, the seasons, all these things that are happening, changing all the time, but they change in fairly predictable ways. If you're at all into science, the more you're into science, the more predictable you know it all is, or the less random you know it all is. Nothing random about it. And one sage said that there's an eternal motion that underlies all the apparent non-motions. And it's been compared to like the bottom of an ocean. There can be a typhoon happening on the surface, and there can be various things happening at various depths. But at the deepest you can go into an ocean, said an Indian sage, you're still going to have a pulsation of movement. There's always movement. So the idea of movement is critical to this idea of ceaseless dissolution. There's nothing that's not moving or going to move. All of us, for example, are moving toward, at least physically speaking, what's called death. And there's no denying it. No belief system will rescue one from it. Having your body frozen when it dies so it can be unthawed when they find the cure for whatever you died of won't prevent it. So there's certain, we all know at some level that things end. Things are going to end. And a lot of us, and I say us, I don't mean us in this room, but just us humans, especially us Western humans, we don't like to think about things ending, that things are going to end. So we tend to live lives that are, Thoreau called them lives of quiet desperation. But we tend to live lives that involve a lot of illusions that enable us to protect ourselves from the knowledge that things are going to end. And these illusions are such that they need reinforcement from the outside. So we spend a lot of our time hanging out with people who will reinforce whatever our illusions are, that prevent us from seeing that our day will come. And when our day comes, we're no longer here. And Americans don't like to think about that. We've been called an adolescent culture. That's kind of putting it mildly. I mean, in terms of history, we're only 200 years old. That's not a very old culture. I mean, India's 5,000 years old. China's, or maybe 10 if you take their tally. China's equally old. I mean, you're talking about old cultures here. America's just like kindergarten. So we tend to have these illusions that we don't see them as illusions, obviously, or they wouldn't be one. But we have these illusions that prevent us from seeing or perceiving the processes that involve beginnings and endings. And sages teach, just for purposes of the talk tonight, and I don't want to argue the point, but for purposes of the talk tonight, I'm going to assume that sages, capital S, exist and have always existed. Always. And if your history if your view of mankind involves something going back to cavemen going around with clubs and dragging the women around by the hair, you're just suffering a terrible illusion, terrible delusion. It's a mad story implanted on the Western mind by people who know better. But it's a convenient thing to have people thinking, when the reality is that human beings, just like you and me, human bodies, human consciousness, goes back 18 million years. 18 million. You're not going to get that even in an archaeology class. They keep pushing it back. But 18 million, they'll just say you're crazy. But that's what the sages say. We've been humans. We've been in these forms for 18 million years. All of us here, all of us in this room. We've done this countless times. There's no one in this room in a human form for the first time. And you say, well, why can't I remember then? Because you're not wise yet. If you were wise, you would remember. Your last life, your last 100 lives, your last 1,000 lives. I mean, 18 million years, you can live a lot of lives. Some people say you've actually been related to almost everyone you meet in some previous life. Brother, sister, father, mother, cousin, uncle, grandparent. So humanity is a family, great big family that's very old, that comes and goes. And sages who are I'm assuming for the purpose of a discussion exist, have existed since the beginning of that 18 million year period. We are not descended from the apes. Yeah, our bodies may be to some extent, but the consciousness isn't. And the only thing science hasn't been able to effectively explain yet is the origin of consciousness. They can't explain it. The materialists, those are people who believe that only matter exists. The materialists are trying to explain consciousness as some byproduct of chemical activity in the brain, because that's only that if all there is matter, then you're going to have to explain consciousness as some kind of outgrowth of material activity or chemical activity. So that's how they try to explain it. But consciousness is this 18 million year figure. It includes consciousness, not just these bodies, but the fact that we're in a body and that we know it. You know, the fact that we're self-aware, self-conscious. That's 18 million years old. And the story goes that these are very sophisticated bodies we're in. I don't know how many of you have noticed that. If you've been to zoos, you've probably noticed that they're slightly more sophisticated than the ones you're looking at in the zoos. And they're the only body, the only body, and I don't mean to, sadden you whale and porpoise fans, because there's nothing wrong with whales and porpoises, and not to mention dogs and stuff like that. But they're the only body that can actually be inhabited by a self-conscious entity, which is why the sages teach, and we need to learn, that to have a human body is an incredible privilege, because it's the only body in which one can seek knowledge, seek wisdom. And that's why in the East, if you have one, you're very grateful that you have one. And you tend not to abuse it. And you tend to want to find out what its uses are, why it's here, what's the point of it being here? Where did it come from? Where is it going? It had a beginning, it's going to have an end. What's it doing in the middle? So another thing the sages teach is that if you really think about it, all we really know about is the middle of things. We don't know the beginnings and we don't know the ends. We're kind of in the middle. And there are relative beginnings and relative endings, but in terms of ultimate beginnings and endings, we don't know. We may have our notions, but we don't have any knowledge. So we're kind of in the middle. And in the middle, most of us are clinging to we're pretty much identified with a name, George, Marcia, Janet, some name. That's who we think. If somebody asks us who we are, we say, I'm George, and actually believe it. I'm George. And then we're identified with George or Mary, and we're identified with the form. called George or Mary. Now, we don't come in that way. We don't come in thinking I'm George, or I'm Mary. We actually come in. We come in as close to being enlightened as it's possible to be without being enlightened, but we lose it very quickly. But those who become enlightened always compare that state to what it's like to a child state, because it's pre-George and pre-Mary, and it's pre-thinking it's a body. They did a study once where they asked young children, did you ever not exist? And almost all of them said no. I've always existed. So, but most of us haven't always existed because we think we're born at some point in time. Which means if you or I, and when I say we, I'm just talking about humans, especially in the West, but it's getting just as bad in the East because we're spreading the poison eastward. So they're becoming more like us, and maybe we're becoming more like them, and, who knows? That's another subject. But for example, if I think I was born at a certain point in time, like my so-called birthday, then that, whether I'm a thinker or not, that automatically has behind it the assumption that I think I'm my body, if I'm claiming I was born on such a date. Whereas what happened on a certain date is the body that you're in was born. That's true. But you're not the body. You're the thing in it, like it or not. A lot of people don't like to be in it, so they try to get, quote, out of it. They say, I'm really out of it, man. Yeah, you are. But you're not out of it in a very good way. You seem to be going backward. You may be out of it, but you're moving in the wrong direction. So we're all in one, more or less. Some are more in it than others, but most of us are identified with our bodies. Not, just in terms of the birth, it being born, it being. We don't call it it, we call it I. That's the identification. I'm such and such an age. I'm a teacher. I'm a failure. Whatever. We have these ways of seeing ourselves, and all these ways of seeing ourselves and seeing others are, from the standpoint of wisdom, complete illusions. You are no more, or whatever you think you are, than anybody else is, whatever they think they are, because those are just thoughts. They're just thoughts. But they're thoughts that we become accustomed to having. Somebody taps our chest when we're 1 year old and keeps saying the word Mary. Pretty soon we'll tap our chest and say the word Mary. And then mom and dad are all happy because now we know our name, because we said it. We said the word that they've been saying at us. So now I'm Mary for the next 85 years. And then Mary takes on a whole identity based usually upon the environment and what mom and dad were like and where Mary grew up. And, not to mention all the stuff that Mary brought in with her that she doesn't even know about, which is a lot of tendencies and good, quote good and quote bad. Okay, so what's all this got to do with ceaseless dissolution? Well, if you think of these things like spring, fall, winter, spring, summer, just simple things like that, birth, growth, age, death, just real simple things, obvious in the sense of being obvious. A person who thinks in terms of those, notices those things, comes to see that most of life, what we call life, is just it's a collection of kind of gross exaggerations. Because from the standpoint of nature, everything's quite simple. And it's pretty undramatic. And it's highly, whether we like it or not, it's highly impersonal. There's nothing personal about the seasons. There's nothing personal about birth and death. There's nothing personal about the sun coming up. And we can personalize all these things, and we do. And we have, but in reality, nature's impersonal. And nature isn't something different from us. So one of the things we'd have to do to understand ceaseless dissolution is to get rid of the distinction, which is easier said than done. All this stuff's easy to do in the head. It's hard to do when you're out there at work or when you're commuting. And none of this is worth a damn if we can't take it outside this room with us. It's just sitting around, saying profound things. Well, it's useless. So it has to be able to connect somehow. And in the connecting these kinds of things to what we're actually doing the rest of the time is the challenge. If it were easy, then the teachings of all the great teachers would long ago have been implemented, and we'd have heaven on earth. What we have instead is a bunch of people believing in all these teachings and acting to the contrary. So we're trying to kind of, how do you not act to the contrary? Even though you got some really cool stuff in your head, but you're still flipping the person off who cut you off on the freeway, or whatever, or you're angry at someone who has 13 items on the grocery line that's only supposed to have a maximum of 12, and they got 13, and it's kind of ruining your day. It's like, how do we connect the idea that sages exist with that kind of thing? And that's the good, legitimate question. So if we notice that if we start living in harmony with the patterns of nature, even just mentally, we'll start seeing that a lot of our life is just a bunch of gross exaggerations, out of sync with most of the patterns that are natural. And that would be a beginning point for thinking, a beginning point for dissolving, ceaseless dissolution, starting to dissolve our own illusions, which is extremely painful to do, primarily because we don't know we have them. So we'd have to kind of look for them. And rather than have them validated by others. Camus, the existential philosopher, made the comment, to begin to think is to begin to be undermined. It is true. To begin to participate in ceaseless dissolution, which is also ceaseless creation, is to begin to be undermined if one wants some kind of permanence. Because there's just no permanence. I mean, you can watch the news tonight, or any other damn night you choose, or listen to the radio news, or look at the newspaper, and there'll be a bunch of people who died that day. And none of them had it on their list of things to do. Let's see, I'll get up, I'll get dressed, I'll go to work, and I'll get 2/3 of the way there, and I'll die in a hideous freeway accident. Number 4 on my list. No, so we never know how long we never know how long we have here. But if we're locked into a bunch of illusions about ourselves, including the possible illusion that we're going to be here more or less indefinitely, then we're not going to be able to understand anything about the idea of ceaseless dissolution. Because we're too caught up in the idea of permanence. A sage will let the real men go by. You can always tell who they are. I used to be one myself. Yeah. I gave it up and I gave it up. Yeah. It's too hard an illusion to maintain. Yeah. I've still got a lot of the remnants of it though. So if I need to interact with the real man, I'm instantly accepted. All I have to do is there they are. Yeah, all I have to do is wear a short sleeve shirt and I'm instantly accepted by the real man. And so most of us are identifying ourselves with a personality, basically, and that is not what sages do. And the personality has certain self-image and likes and dislikes and all this. And we're living in a time, it's said, when increasing numbers of people are here around the globe, but not in huge numbers, not in groups necessarily, but increasing numbers of people are starting to think there might be more to life than going to school, getting married, having children, having a family, retiring, and dying. There just might be a little more to it than that. And not to say that shouldn't be part of it, but there might be more to it than that. And apparently more and more people are coming to sense this. And in a way it's negative because in sensing this, people are kind of sensing that they're missing something. Okay, I'm married relatively happily. I've got kids and they're not too screwed up. I've got a job that's supporting me, but there's something missing. What is it? And apparently this is an increasing phenomena. This thing that there's something missing. Now, and a lot of people, and it's not always conscious. It's just a kind of a feeling. Like you had your goals, and you've kind of achieved them, and you don't feel that happy. You don't feel that fulfilled. Okay, I got the wife or the husband, got my own house, I'm not paying rent, I'm not giving some other idiot my money. I'm building up a little equity. I got my second car going. Just got an advancement at work. Now I can tell a few other people what to do. So I'm not on the receiving end of it all. Just got my country club membership. And I'm not happy. I'm not sleeping well. My children aren't talking to me. My husband or wife only talks to me in terms of, important matters like who's going to take the garbage out. Or what should we watch tonight? Or, it's like something's missing. And this is a good thing perhaps to be happening. People realizing there's something missing, but it's a double-edged sword. Because some people can take that as a challenge and try to look deeper. I mean, to put it kind of obviously, maybe there's more to life than this surface stuff. And there are people who might try to find out what that might be. But other people who feel this is something missing thing might take it the other way and just seek oblivion. Like the housewife with the 10-year Valium addiction, you know, who's always kind of smiley and calm and addicted, you know. Or the guy who stops at the bar every day on the way home from work, you know, just have a few with the guys, you know, and it's not because he's happy as hell. It's not because he's in bliss consciousness that he's stopping there. You might think that will put him into bliss consciousness, and it might for like an hour, maybe. Or maybe he's into some drug, you know, that I'll just get the right combination of drugs, man, and I'll feel okay. So it's about not feeling okay. A lot of people don't feel okay. And a lot of them are dying behind it. You know, it's sad. You know, there are a lot of people dying behind not feeling okay because they don't know what to do with it. So they're self-medicating themselves. I mean, alcoholism's rampant. Drug abuse is rampant. You know, and abortions are almost outnumber births. You know, it's a tough situation. There's a lot of dissatisfaction, and this is among people who are successful in worldly terms. This isn't just the poor blacks or the poor Mexicans. You know, off in the barrios or the ghettos. You know, these are like silk sheet people. So, what do you do when you find out that this isn't it? Yeah. Or that if this is it, there's got to be more to it. There's got to be more to it. It said that daytime is kind of when most of us confront what we think is reality. And remember, us is just the average person. So we go through the day and whether it goes well or doesn't go well, or whether we have a real up day or a real down day or a real argumentative day, or whatever kind of day we have, it's usually relatively pleasant to go to sleep, to get a rest, you know, and because it's tough to go through a day. So part of our life is daytime, and as I was saying a few moments ago, for a lot of us, it's not a very happy time, daytime. Maybe on weekends it might be kind of happy, but certainly for most people it's not happy during the work week. Very few people really come home saying how much fun they had at work. Oh man, I loved it, it's incredible today. Not really, you don't hear it too much, you know. That's why the stop's on the way home. Take the edge off. What edge? We're doing geometry here now? Got all these edges going? Yeah, so just to put it in a nutshell so we can move on, most people aren't happy during the daytime. You know, if you meet someone who is, and I don't mean just for the moment, I mean everybody has their moments, you know. Some people might be happy for a whole day once in a while. Or someone might be happy for a few hours during a day. Now we're talking about the world, not just Ventura. You know, so there are a lot of people that aren't having good days, and there are a lot of us that don't give a damn. You know, if there are a few hundred to thousand of them starving over there, and we see it on TV, you know, next thing we see on TV is like some jock making $7 million a year because he can put a ball through a hoop. And we regard both things about equally. And then we move on, news is over. Time for our favorite program, Survivor. You know? The ones who are never going to the ones who are never going to get old or die or get ugly, you know. We're fascinated by this stuff. Yeah. So daytime is often not very happy time. So sleep is like a release. And Shakespeare called sleep the what did he call it? The second life. He called sleep the second life. Huh? Second course. Yeah, the second course. The first course is waking life. It's the toughest. Lots of times we might get inspired and during the first course and decide we want to change something about ourselves. A good example would be New Year's resolutions taken seriously at the time. You know, I really got to do something about my temper, or I really got to do something about this or that, and we're actually kind of serious at the time that we say those words to ourselves. But it's difficult not to fall back into our previous patterns. It's difficult to keep it moving, which is where the ceaseless dissolution comes in. Because if we could tune into that, we could keep these things moving. But we get stuck, and rather than keep my New Year's resolution going, I can fall back and hang out with people who haven't kept theirs going either, and we can all validate each other as not keeping it going, make jokes about it and stuff, and never change. But as one sage said, or asked, if a doctor told you you had 3 days left to live, what would you change? And these are like thought exercises. Thought exercises can be good. You know, the mind isn't totally the enemy. You know, a lot of these guru types, you know, they make a big deal out of putting the mind down. You know, we have a mind for a reason. You know, we're the only beings that do have one that can be used self-consciously to think something through. Socrates called it dianoia, D-I-A-N-O-I-A, to think something through. So it's the main thing a human being has to learn how to do. Because if you learn to think things through, you can get over your illusions. Because you can't think an illusion through without seeing that it's an illusion. It's just some trip that you're finding convenient to have, so you don't have to really do anything with yourself. I'm just fine the way I am. I may have a little temper problem once in a while, but basically, no real need to change. Yeah. So such people aren't going anywhere quickly. They're not aware of the fact of constant change. So if I'm not changing in a world of constant change, then you could say, kind of putting it roughly, I'm a little bit out of touch with things. A little bit out of touch with things. It's been said that one exercise is to ask yourself quietly when you're by yourself, what in my life is real to me? What in my life is sacred to me? What in my life makes the most sense? And it's said that a lot of people can't answer these questions. They don't know. And that failure to be able to answer those questions can be the beginning point of starting to think things through. Or if you're the person who's just been told by your doctor that you have 3 days left to live, that could be the beginning point of thinking things through. I mean, you all probably know people who have been told by some doctor that they have X amount of time left to live. And if you do know such a person, one of two things happens. They either go into an incredible depression, or they all of a sudden decide what's really important to them. And it turns out usually that what they decide is really important to them is quite different from what they've been thinking up to that point. All of a sudden I got 3 days left to live, and all of a sudden I'm thinking of all the people I didn't apologize to and I don't have time to now. And all the people I let down and I don't have time to correct it. It's sad, because at the end, we can fool ourselves all the way to the end. But at the end, we're gonna know. So the wise say, and this is all common sense, really. There was a sage who said, there's a word that's gotten a bad rap due to the New Age, combined with the right-wing Christians, who aren't that different from each other in reality. But the word's occultism, and all it means is that which is hidden. It's not a bunch of black magicians or people drawing 5-pointed stars on floors and in the full moon. All it means is that which is hidden. Look it up in a dictionary. Occult means hidden. How did I get onto this, for heaven's sake? Yeah, it's hidden, whatever it was. So one of the things that that sages teach their students, if you're suddenly told you have this amount of time left to live, and all of a sudden you have all these regrets, and all these things you wanted to do but can't because it's too late, why not take it for granted that you're going to die, point one, which is hard for Americans to do, and two, why not take it for granted that you don't know when? That's even harder, because most people kind of think, I got quite a bit of time left, I'm only 30. 20 or 40, maybe even 60. Because people are living longer and longer, so it's easier to think, I got time, I'll think about that later. Right now I got to figure out how to pay off the power boat. But later on I'll start thinking about what my real priorities are. So sages teach, if you want to get in harmony with nature, start doing exercises like a sage, whatever that is. A sage, a wise person, doesn't live day to day. On a Friday, they'll kind of think out as well as they can, and not in gory detail, but on a Friday they'll think out pretty much, what do I intend to do between now and Sunday after next? They won't just get up in the morning and go. It's like, think out a week, and not think it out in terms of planning and structuring all of it. Just a general overview of my week ahead of time. And then allowing for karma to work as the week goes on, and not imposing, not forcing things, but kind of having a picture before you go into it. Like say you're going to meet, you're going to meet a certain person tomorrow at 10. And this doesn't even have to be a sage, but a sage would do this. You're going to meet a certain person tomorrow at 10. Well, you could prepare. Like, what are my intentions in meeting this person at 10? What do I hope to accomplish? What do I know about this person? who is this person? What can I say that might be of benefit to them? And this kind of thinking will actually change the way one interacts with people, because it will have more thought behind it. And especially if one knows that one's interacting with a being that's ageless. The body's not ageless, but who you're talking to is ageless. You're ageless. So you got a couple ageless beings interacting. One of whom might know so. And the other one might think they're a garbage collector. Whereas they're another ageless being who happens to be a garbage collector this time. Maybe they were a prince the last time, who knows? So the daytime is when we do the best we can, but we can do better if we do these little exercises. It makes us more able to assimilate experience. Because it doesn't help us much to go through a day or a week or a month or a year if we haven't learned anything from it or assimilated anything from it. I mean, what's the point? Going through a whole life and learning nothing? So it's like, what can I learn from this? Especially, what can I learn from the this is where I've kind of blown it. Rather than say, oh, I blew it, I'm a failure in life, poor me, poor me. Why can't we just, when we've blown it, or we think we've blown it, let's learn something. Okay, if I don't think that was cool, what I just did, what can I do to prevent doing that in the future, so as not to feel bad again? And that would mean probably making some kind of resolve, otherwise known as activating the will, which is what's lacking in most of us. The continuity of will. It's hard to will something and keep it going. So it takes it's almost a swear word. It takes a little discipline. Yeah. To keep it going. Yeah.
Can we fix your mic? Oh, that's down.
Yeah. We got 3 mics going here. This is all being recorded for some record. Hopefully after I'm long gone. As it is, I have to listen to it being, mastered and so forth. So the first course of the day of life is daytime. The second course is nighttime, and that's usually when we get a little peace. There are nightmares and stuff like that, but for the most part, we get a little bit of rest. You can go to sleep, you can go to bed, and you can say, you kind of review your day, and that's what Pythagoras recommended, by the way. Review your day every night at the end, and give yourself credit for what you did that was appropriate, and resolve to do better on the stuff that wasn't so appropriate. But at some point, turn the damn analytical mind off and just go to sleep, says Shakespeare. Just sleep. It's analogous to death. Just a little rest from all the sensation, from all the thinking, from all the weird vibes, to talk hippie talk, and some of us are more sensitive to vibes than others, and the ones who are less sensitive in a way are better off. in a way, they're not better off because they're less aware of what's going on around them. But at the same time, they don't have to deal with as much. Someone else, if they're very aware of what's very sensitive, it's hard for them even to be in some rooms because the vibes are so sharp, almost painful. So sleep is good. Sages recommend sleep. So what's the third course? If the first course is the waking state, where we're mostly bound by illusions, and the second course is sleep, where we get out of our illusions for a short time. What's the third course? And Shakespeare doesn't indicate a third course. Shakespeare also says, incidentally, that he doesn't put it quite this way, but in his plays, he kind of indicates that every life, like we're all living a life at the moment, the whole of that life is a role in a play. And we've all been in a lot of roles. We've all played a lot of roles in a lot of different plays. In this life, we're playing whatever role we're playing in this life. And the range of roles in Shakespeare goes in his last play called The Tempest. The range of roles goes from Puck, who's kind of an airy little fairy type guy, to Prospero, who's a magician. And like every life is a play, a night of a play. And if a person could begin to think of their life that way, they develop an incredible sense of detachment. Not indifference, but detachment. This is the play I'm in, like it or not. This is the body I'm in. This is the history I've had so far in this body. I have certain choices I can make today that are within my power to bring about. And that's it. I mean, I can make all kinds of unrealistic thoughts and choices today, but they won't go anywhere. So in a way, we're all playing our roles. And so the first role is a daytime role, and it's very difficult to find people who are awake during the daytime. And if you don't know what I mean, you'll know when you meet one. Someone who's actually awake during the waking state. There's several that come to these talks who are actually pretty awake people. If you want to meet someone who's awake, you're not sure, what do you mean? We're all awake when we're awake, aren't we? No. So you want to know what it is to be awake, go hang out with a 2-year-old for a while. They're awake. They're not kind of dozing off in some illusion and calling themselves, having some weird view of who they are. They're just awake. I mean, they're hard to be around because they have so much, they're almost too awake, That's why we send them to school, to put them to sleep. So by the time they're done with our educational system, they've been dead for years. So, but we won't go there. That's deadly. The educational system. So what's the third course? For most people, the third course, I mean, there's the waking state, the dream state, or the sleep state. We all know about those already. Well, what's the third course? Well, for Americans, it would have to be something like dessert. The third course would be finally getting what I want. Finally getting what I want. And if I'm American, it better happen quickly. I mean, it better happen soon. My dessert, my just desserts. Yeah. So most people are kind of in a hurry to get to the reward for this incredible life they've lived. There must be some reward, So I'm going to meet the perfect, partner. I'm going to get the perfect job. I know I'm going to win the lottery this week. I mean, I put $2,000 into it. That increases my odds considerably. So we tend to want to grab at the third course. Like, where is it? When is it? And the amazing thing is that nobody can tell you. I mean, lots of people might try to, but nobody can actually tell you what your third course is. But a sage will tell you that you have one, and that you may not discover it until you're dying, in which case you kind of missed it. But you will know it when you're dying, apparently. But no one can tell you what your third course is. Some people try, like here's what you should do, or here's what your trip is, or whatever. But it's said that an actual sage, well, in every life there's some, it's not really a secret, but in every life there's something fundamental to be discovered by that person about themselves in every single life, except for sages who have made these discoveries already. They have nothing left to discover about their, quote, self, because they don't have one anymore. So in every life there's something critical to be discovered about oneself. And even though we tell each other what is critical here's what's critical for you to discover about yourself, we do that sometimes with each other. It's said that sages who just by looking at us knows immediately what our secret is. Not that we're carrying around a secret, but knows what we have to discover about ourselves in this life, or at least have the potential to discover. A sage will never tell us what it is. It's kind of like Lao Tzu said, those who say don't know, and those who know don't say. It's an application of that principle. A sage will meet you and immediately know the purpose of this life for you. But it's up to you to discover it, and you will or you won't. But they say at death you'll know what it was. But as Socrates said, and the sages agree, and he wasn't a sage, and he admitted it, he knew it. Socrates knew he wasn't a sage. He said, all I know is I know I don't know anything, which Plato said is the beginning of wisdom, is to know you don't know. Because that means you have no illusions. So it's hard to meet an ignorant person like Socrates. And if we did meet an ignorant person like Socrates, we'd probably be pretty self-conscious around them. Because if I got no illusions, I can see yours as clear as a bell. Because I don't have any blinders on. But I don't know anything. So Socrates wasn't a sage, but he did recommend, he did say that the whole of life is a preparation for the moment of death. The whole of life is a preparation for the moment of death. So you don't have to wait till your doctor says you have 3 days to live to find out what you should have been doing all along. You can start thinking about it anytime. Because this idea that we have as much time as we need may not be true. May not be true. I have a friend who recently died of cancer. And it was quite clear to me, pretty close to the end, his end, that he hadn't seen what he needed to see. He'd spent his whole life not seeing it. And he spent his life not seeing it by involving himself in very abstract metaphysical questions, instead of looking at what was right in front of his face, in which anyone could have told him. So that's sad. It's sad, that these things happen. But if we're willing to engage, like nature is a constant sacrifice. And we're part of nature, but just talking about nature apart from us for a moment. Nature is constantly, everything sacrificing itself for something else. I mean, speaking kind of metaphorically almost. Like the trees sacrifice their leaves, and the clouds sacrifice the water, and the water goes to the rivers, it goes to the oceans. It's all like giving. It's all like movement. Nothing's held on to. Nothing's held on to. It's all let go. And everything, the closest maybe human beings come to this in a generalized kind of way is except in abnormal cases, mothers and children. Mothers are often very sacrificial relative to their child. And they'll give up almost anything, just to care for the child. And so I want to talk a little bit more about the reward system, the desserts. If sages are people who see not just tomorrow or like next week, but if you can imagine a being whose consciousness is so elevated that they can actually stay awake, so to speak, during periods where nothing exists at all, that they can take in, their consciousness can take in a whole millennia. Then, if you can imagine that state of consciousness, a consciousness that watched ancient Egypt, that watched the Roman Empire, that watched, ancient India. If you're not too skeptical, that watched the civilization of Atlantis come and go. That watch mountain ranges appear. Beings that have watched all that. Not walking around in human forms necessarily at all, but whose consciousness is, when you talk about universal consciousness, which people find glibly talk about sometimes these days, universal consciousness means timeless. So they're beings who have witnessed all of time. And that's a sage. And you don't find those people in Ojai, or in Sedona, or in Colorado, or even in India. You don't find these people. They're not walking around with signs on their backs, or with a certain little dress code that lets you know who they are. And 99 times out of 100, they're not telling you that this kind of consciousness exists in them. Assuming they're in human form at all. Most great sages aren't in human form. We think, because we are identified with our bodies, even though we may think we're not, But if you don't think you're identified with your body, then next time you're sick, don't be saying, I'm sick. Say, my body's sick. And if you really believe that, then you're making some headway. If you're just saying it, you're not making any headway. You really do think you're sick. But you're not. Your body's sick. Your body's got cancer. You don't have cancer. So if you think of that, you can actually get the point where there are several people I know in this room who actually know, not up here in their head, because that doesn't count for anything. They know in their heart, experientially, they know they're not their bodies. So they take care of the body, actually better than people think they are their bodies. They take care of it. It has certain needs, food, certain kind of food are better for it than others and so forth. But if you know you're not your body, then you know that death isn't the end of you. It's the end of your body. Now if you think that out a little bit, and then you think of somebody like Buddha, or Jesus, or Krishna, or you pick your favorite one. Muhammad, Moses, it doesn't matter. Those are all beings in historical time, and this is putting it really crudely, because they're all so elevated compared to us. But these are all beings who clearly knew they weren't their bodies. Therefore, when their bodies died, they didn't. Which means whoever they are, whatever they were, still exist. These beings still exist. Some of them may even be in new bodies. But maybe this time they're not in a public role. Maybe they're picking lettuce down in the fields in Oxnard. Smiling at otherwise sad people. Bringing a little light into somebody's day. So the idea of sages whose consciousness actually transcends history is a totally awesome idea. That such beings actually exist. And sometimes they take on a human form in a public way. And that's where the world religions have come from. And then some people argue. They're arguing right now in the Middle East. Christ versus Moses versus Muhammad. That's what's going on right now. What if they're all the same being? Or to put it a little more occultly, what if they're all three rays of the same being? Like you've all seen a rainbow. The colors don't, they're all the colors make up the rainbow, but there's only one source of light. And there's some kind of prism thing happening which is creating the rainbow you're seeing. But the thing shining into the prism is pure light, colorless. So what if all these beings that we fight over, no, it was Jesus. No, it was Buddha. No, Muhammad. And I'm armed to the teeth to prove my point. What if these are all just rays of like a rainbow? What if there's a hierarchy of totally enlightened beings? And because they had the compassion to actually take on a human form, which is incredibly limiting, in living among people like us, who don't even want what they have to offer, because we usually try to kill them, or we at least slander them. A few of us appreciate them, but it's always usually just a handful. Read the life of Buddha, read the life of Jesus, any of them. It's a handful, and the rest don't want to be bothered. Don't bother me. You can go do your thing, but don't do it here. Don't be telling us that the only reason we're in Iraq is because they have a lot of oil. Don't be blasting the illusions that we're putting off on TV. You notice you haven't heard anything about the oil in Iraq for quite a long time? Interesting, huh? Since it's the only reason we're there. Where's it going? Follow the money, as they say. Yeah, but you can't come in and say stuff like this. This is the kind of thing Jesus did. He kicked the money changers out of the temple. These guys aren't like simpering little beings that go around saying, love your neighbor, golden rule. He kicked the money changers out of the damn temple. Said, get the hell out of here. You don't belong here. What if somebody went down to the Crystal Cathedral in Anaheim and did that? This Crystal Cathedral, brings in millions of dollars a year. What if someone went down there and said, get these collection plates out of here? Money's got nothing to do with this. I've said before in different lectures that if we were born in an ancient culture, like Egypt or Greece, we would actually be brought up to know, because they used to believe in wisdom in these old cultures. Everyone didn't go for it, but they at least believed that it existed and that you could go for it. But one of the rules of thumb is if the person who claimed to have it, the so-called teacher, was asking anything of you for it, walk the other way. Because it's free. It's free. It's always been free. It's like the sunlight. I'm sure that some capitalists like to figure out how to charge for sunlight. If they could figure out a way, they'd do it. As it is, they charge for water, and keep losing tuck it away here. It's fine. Yeah, so back to the secret. So a sage doesn't tell us what our secret is, but a sage will see what our secret is and hope that we find it. But we can only find it by taking stock of ourselves and asking kind of difficult questions. Like, what am I really up to? What are my priorities? What's really important to me? And maybe hanging around with other people who are asking the same kinds of questions. And otherwise being rather kind if one can. Because there's always an option. You can let it get to you, or you can try to have a little bit of compassion. There are a couple other things I wanted to mention here. I wanted to actually read. It says here, there might be a point in one's life where one gets like kind of a peak experience, as Maslow called it, or just a sudden flash of insight, maybe into like how you've kind of been blowing it, but suddenly you see it and you want to start over. You want a new beginning. So relative to that, we wish to start again. This is painful and poignant, but when we have been through it, we can sympathize with others who are also trying to create change within a social context where there is more abortion than creation. Because we remember our past selves and our protracted struggle, we can make our life meaningful to another person trying to do the same. Paradoxically, in highly complex social structures, there's more passivity than anywhere else in the world. This takes the form of endless fantasizing, producing a compensatory life which is partly a dark secret, but also partly the only sense of subjective reality accessible. It involves endless hopings. Suddenly a miracle will take place. Suddenly everything will change. Suddenly one will get $1 billion. Suddenly the most perfect man or woman will come and rescue one from the bottomless pit of self-hatred and usher one into the Garden of Eden. Suddenly a perfect ruler will arrive upon the political scene and lead us into a new age. Yet for all this, endless reinforcement is needed. We do not really believe in our own fantasizing. It is tiring. We feel guilty. So nature gently admonishes, now go to sleep. Second course, now go to sleep. This is ire. Yeah. And then the third course we've already mentioned. The thing about change that's perhaps most relevant is that often the people going through it will be the last to understand it. It's said sometimes in literature that a brilliant literary critic may understand what's written better than the man or woman who wrote it. So the same thing could be said, like we could go through a significant experience and someone else may realize its significance before we do. It's also said that relative to human speech, that sometimes we learn more from what people don't say to us than what they do. And sometimes we have an impact on people which we'll never know about. And yet it could change their life. And we don't need to know. He also points out that the changes, when a person really starts understanding change, they're not like big clumpy things. They're kind of a big clump of change, with a name you can put on it. Most changes, and all of us know this probably, except for like radical changes if we've been through any in our life, but for the most part changes are very subtle. We often only notice them after the fact, but they're always occurring. And the deeper we get into ourselves, the irony is that the person who's most able to initiate positive change is the person who is most in touch with the changeless. And the only way to become more in touch with the changeless is through another naughty word, meditation of some sort. Some form of withdrawing the senses and the mind from the first course, the world. Because everything out here is changing. Whether we like it or not, or acknowledge it or not, it is. But if we can withdraw the mind through practice, another dirty word, with a little bit of discipline, over time, it happens during sleep, but we have to be able to do it when we're awake. Withdraw the mind to at least more subtle levels of motion, till you can get to the point where there's no motion at all, but there's pure consciousness. Pure consciousness, no motion. That's a sage. I mean, sage is a lot of things, but that's one of them. Pure consciousness, no motion, 24/7, not just for a moment. So this idea of people being enlightened and people being sages that you hear about all the time, it's all nonsense. We don't live in a golden age. There aren't sages walking around among us. Dalai Lama says, he says it repeatedly when he's asked. He says, I'm a simple monk. And he means it. People can't, take it in because, he's the Dalai Lama. Well, according to him, he's a simple monk. A simple monk who took on a certain role because he was asked to. But he's a simple monk. He doesn't claim to be a sage. He'd consider it a sacrilege to consider himself a sage. I mean, it's like almost a sin, to put yourself on that level. Gandhi, a lot of people, when they hear Gandhi's name, they hear Mahatma Gandhi and they think Mahatma is like his first name or something. Mahatma means, Maha means great, and Atma means soul. And the two together, Mahatma means great soul, which is a Hindu Sanskrit word for sage. So when they started calling Gandhi Mahatma, thanks to Nehru, he was totally embarrassed. Totally embarrassed. Because he said, I've never met one. He knew they existed. He said, I've never met one. And it has to be because I haven't deserved to. That's Gandhi. That's a Gandhi. If I had deserved to, I would have. That's why they say when the pupil's ready, the teacher will appear. So if the teacher hasn't appeared, it's not, don't lay it on the teacher. You're not ready. Or you're ready for the one you got, Yeah, so a little more discrimination is what a lot of us need. We could spread the word. Tell people to be a little more discriminative, a little more thoughtful. Don't buy into someone knowing something just because they say they know something, or because they're dressing a certain way, or they're wearing a crystal around their neck, or whatever the hell their little trip is. Especially if they have their hand out. Just walk away. I mean, I'm not saying you have to walk away, but if you're looking for the real thing, walk away. It's not there. Never has been, never will be. The other thing that's kind of cool about real teachers is they don't take on anyone who shows up and wants to study with them. Any more than, say, I read a story about, I forget her name, some of you would probably know it. She was a Russian ballet teacher, and she taught some of the greatest ballet teachers in the 20th, ballerinas, she's and whatever the male counterpart is. She taught some of the best in the 20th century. I forget her name. But she was like the best teacher in the world. And people would want, there are several instances where parents thought their child, who might be 4 or 5 or 6, had the potential to be like a prima ballerina or whatever. I mean, a real one. And they take this 5 or 6-year-old child to this woman in Russia, and the woman would say, and the child would be kind of a prodigy already, say in terms of ballet. So they take this prodigy to this woman in Russia, and the woman would say, in effect, well, do your thing, show me what you have. And then the woman would say to the parents, don't waste your time. She can be good, but she'll never be a prima ballerina. She could see that at 5. So sages are kind of like that. It's like Einstein didn't teach physics 1. Be a waste of his time. And to get in his classes, you had to be at the level where you could understand what he had to say. So sages don't teach religion 1. They don't teach people who can't, I don't know, just can't do simple things like be nice to the next human being they meet, or who can't kind of keep their house in some kind of minimal order, or can't fulfill their kind of ordinary obligations, or who are afraid of their checkbook. If people haven't even handled the basics, the sage isn't going to come back when you're ready. I knew a sage who would say to people who wanted to have something to do with him, he'd say, well, when you've decided what you're going to do to pay your rent and food and all that, you get some sort of job thing worked out for yourself. And when you decide what you're going to do with the opposite gender, and a couple of other things, in other words, when you got the basics kind of decided, come back and we'll talk. But until you got the basics down, the sage has nothing to teach you. What's a sage is going to say? Don't be afraid of your checkbook. You don't need a sage to tell you that, or don't spend more than you have, So these beings who are kind of universally self-conscious, if we were to move toward that inward in ourselves as far as we can go and keep at it, and get to that still point in consciousness, which is outside time and space, then we can get a sense of the present. But the present, which a lot of people are kind of onto now, it's one of the trips now. It's like be in the now, And there was that popular book out by some guy about now. Yeah, what's the name of the book though?
The Power of Now.
Yeah, The Power of Now. He's talking about now. It's like, oh, far out, man. We're in the now. Yeah. Well, in reality, if a person reaches far enough into him or herself, it's very, very difficult. If you read the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna, he says to Arjuna, his pupil, it's difficult, but it can be done. It can be done, but it's difficult. Why? Because you got to contend with your mind. And it's hard to quiet the thing. It's hard to get it to stop, other than through sleep. But in the waking state, to get the thing to get so you can withdraw till your consciousness is beyond all the flux. Then you're in the present. But not the now this guy's talking about. You're in eternal duration. Because the present is elusive. It's elusive. There's no such thing. All there is duration. And that's what sages are aware of, is duration. Without beginning or end. Without beginning or end. So the secret is we're all a bunch of immortal beings playing our low roles in this play. And we've done it before, we'll do it again. I don't think any of us are far enough along so we can choose not to do it again. That there is such a point, but you have to be very advanced to have a choice as to whether you're born again. Most of us are just, we don't choose to wake up tomorrow morning. Let's see, should I wake up or not? No, it just happens. And rebirth's the same way. It just happens as a result of one's previous actions. So I also wanted just to mention this, that sages, if you're reviewing your day, like Pythagoras suggested. It's always good to see the positive parts of it. Yeah, don't end up with a negative ledger at the end of the day, because that's kind of a melodramatic kind of thing. Even if you didn't live up to anything you thought you should have that day, you still shouldn't end up with a negative ledger. It says, this is last quote here. It's a terrible mistake to write daily one's obituary and to do it badly. If people want to put themselves into perspective, make their own efforts, and accept their unimportance, they may be of service. The wise work at all times through all humanity. The question is not, can they use me, but am I open? Am I ready? So the wise are working all the time, because they're not in space and time. So it's not like, can they use me? It's like, am I ready to be used? But you have to get ready. Like Shakespeare said, readiness is all. And the wise are the ones who know what to do when, because timing is everything. So the people who can deal with ceaseless dissolution the best are the ones who have centered their consciousness in that which isn't changing. So it's kind of like a paradox. If I'm in changeless consciousness, I can initiate change that would do the most good for the most people. And that state of consciousness has a Sanskrit name, and it translates as self-analyzing reflection. Self-analyzing reflection. It's just consciousness aware of itself, but not as a person, not even as a being. Just consciousness aware of itself. And that's a sage. Maybe in a body, may not be in a body. If it's in a body, it's going to have a personality, because to be in a body, you have to have one. But they're not going to be identified with it. It'll have its ups, it'll have its downs, it'll have its quirks. The lives of most of the sages that we read about are all romanticized, because these weren't all like people who were full of sweetness and light. Most of them suffered greatly. The woman named Blavatsky, who is a student of sages, if not more, she was ill almost her entire life. She had a terrible temper. She was very difficult to get along with. And yet she changed. She's probably responsible for most of the changes that have happened in the 20th century. Just through the people who read her writings and took them seriously, one of whom was Einstein, who said he got his idea of relativity from something she wrote. But here's a woman who's actually a sage in a body. The body's totally ill most of the time. The personality's a mess most of the time. And yet there's this incredible writing occurring that's affecting a whole age. And she died, more or less hated, slandered, accused of all kinds of weird things or faults. Yeah. So, it's a sacrifice for a sage to come into this world. So the idea of ceaseless dissolution is really compatible with the idea of ceaseless beginning. And if you want to connect ceaseless dissolution to a Hindu quote-unquote deity, it would be Shiva, Shiva. You got Brahma, that he's got to do with creation. You got Vishnu, who's got to do with preservation, keeping things moving, or keeping things in existence. Then you got Shiva, who is a destroyer regenerator. Regenerator. It's not, there's no such thing as endings, because every ending is the beginning of something else. But ceaseless dissolution has to do with Shiva, the so-called God Shiva. Most of us, every human being is a worshiper of either Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva, even if you're an atheist or a born-again Christian or what, it doesn't matter what you call yourself. You're either more into beginnings, or you're more into like keeping things going, or you're more into like, let's change this and start something different. We're all involved in all three, but if you look at your life real objectively, you're more into one of those three than the others. I mean, some people like to start things. Other people like to keep things, kind of just keep it going, you know. They're usually Republicans. You know, just kind of keep things status quo, you know, everything's kind of fine as it is. Then you get the Shiva people, they're like the revolutionaries, the anarchists, you know, Bakunin and some of these guys, Marx. No, this thing sucks. Let's change. We got to change this. There's too many people suffering. You know, and you got 3% of the people, you know, controlling 97% of the wealth. Something's wrong here. So the Shiva people are going to want to change that. But you know, we have to wake them up, because we've got too many Vishnu people right now, and that's because of the media. Because people are watching it and believing it. So they kind of think everything's okay. I mean, at least in the sense that you don't have, there's nothing to do. You know. So we got to wake up some of these Vishnu people. Probably it won't be too long. They're going to wake up a little bit. Maybe not in our lifetime, but maybe in some of your lifetime there'll be some radical changes. Because how long can 3% of the people control 97% of the wealth? You know, when you got the highest murder rate in the nation within 2 miles of the White House. Yeah, read the works of a guy named Pelecanos, Pelacanos. He's writing about the black ghettos in Washington, D.C. It's like you're right there. And here are all these high-powered senators, congressmen, and presidents, and they could care less that there are all these shootings going on just a couple miles away. Poverty, kids being shot, 11-year-olds with guns, shooting other 11-year-olds, making their marks so they can be in the gang. You know, I mean, we tolerate all this, but it doesn't get on the news. See, what gets on the news is not that bad, really. You know, it's bad, it's negative, but it's not that bad. It's nothing we have to do anything about. Yeah. So those who are able to initiate the changes for the good are those who are least involved in what's going on, the most detached, the most impersonal. That's the other thing. I just end on this. For some reason, it turned into talking about sages quite a bit. But sages are extremely impersonal. I mean, if you meet one, they'll probably be nice to you. How are you doing? I mean, if you know they're a sage and they know you know they're one, they're more apt to rip you apart than anything else. So maybe you'll get moving. they'll just make a list of all the stuff you're kidding yourself about. Because they say the function of a true teacher is to throw the student back on themselves. It's not to validate their illusions. It's like a mirror. They just hold up a mirror. And if you don't like what you see, you got two choices. One, you can go inside and deal with it, or two, you can hate the mirror. And that's usually what happens. So we kill the mirror, break the mirror. Because a sage there's no one there in a sage. It's just pure consciousness. It's hard to imagine. And it's pure consciousness that's universal. There are accounts of sages who have been seen in two places at the same time. So they're not even limited to one body. There's something I was going to mention. Oh yeah, just an exercise. This is just a little exercise if you want to try it. If you want to meet the enemy, even though the mind's important, but part of it isn't very important. But if you want to meet the enemy, and some of you have probably done this, so it won't be news to you, but just sit down by yourself, no one else around, no TV on, no music on, no nothing on, quiet, and decide you're going to put your mind on some idea. You pick it, but something kind of meaningful to you, like a Jesus or Buddha or human enlightenment or world peace, or just some idea you want to focus on. We're just talking about focus. And say to yourself, I'm going to focus my mind on this idea for 5 minutes. For 5 minutes. And get a little timer or something to go off in 5 minutes, so you're not looking at your watch to see how much time you have left to go. How much longer do I have to do this? See, because that'll distract you. So just, I'm going to think about this for 5 minutes. And then just start thinking about it. Just not think about it, just focus on it like you're shining a flashlight on an object. You're shining your mind on this idea. Just 5 minutes. And see what happens. I would bet that most of you can't keep it there for 5 minutes. It'll next thing, all of a sudden it'll be saying stuff to you like, why in the hell am I doing this? Or I'm hungry. Or this is stupid. And the deal is, if you want to move in the direction of the sages, the deal is, no matter how many times your mind takes you away from what you're trying to focus on for those 5 minutes, the minute you realize your mind's taking you away from it, just bring it back to it. Don't think about where it's gone, don't get into it, just bring it right back to what you're focusing on. And if you have to bring it back 25 times in 5 minutes, no big deal. But try it again tomorrow for 5 minutes. And the next day for 5 minutes. Maybe after a month you're only having to bring it back 20 times in 5 minutes rather than 25. That's called progress. That's all the whole thing's about. Not instant gratification, not perfection, just progress. If I can focus if I can keep my mind steady for 20 minutes by the time I die, whereas I could do it maybe for 30 seconds 25 years before, I'll come in with that ability next time. I'll be that far ahead. I'll be good for 30 minutes of concentration. So it's all just practice. That's why these lectures are being given. I mean, even though there's metaphysical aspects, it just comes down to like, well, what can I actually do? Try to focus your mind on something for 5 minutes. And absolutely no judgment. Gee, what a failure! I had to come bring my mind back 45 times. No judgment, impersonal. treat yourself as impersonally as you do the people you see on TV. Just be impersonal. Or objective, to use a scientific word. Okay, I had to bring it back 30 times. Fact, not good, not bad, just a fact. A month later, brought it back 15 times. Okay, give yourself a little credit. You're making some headway. But if you try that little experiment, just for the hell of it even, one, you'll learn something about yourself, and two, you'll learn to appreciate what a sage is a little bit more. Someone who can keep their mind anywhere they want it as long as they want to. Compared to me, who has to bring my mind back 25 times in 5 minutes to one thing, you start realizing the gap. And that's why you shouldn't pay much attention to all these phony gurus running around. Because they can't keep their mind on anything any longer than you can, probably. Which is why they're telling you how to do it. For a fee. I'm having a little weekend retreat coming up. It'll only cost you $200,000 each. But the end, you'll be enlightened by Monday. Give you a little E. You'll get an E tattooed on your forehead. Yeah, it's true. So that's about it. Ceaseless dissolution is about keeping moving. Keeping moving. Try not to get stuck. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have to go, but we'll still.
Quick question. You mentioned the focus skills carry over.
Yeah.
Anything else we're working on that carries over?
Well, let's just say this way. Every single thing every vulnerability that I work out in this lifetime, I won't have to work out in the next one.
Perhaps
Kindness, yeah. Every virtue I make development on in this lifetime will be there in the following one. To put it in metaphorical terms, every enemy I slay in this life, I don't have to slay in the future. So again, you're talking about progress, not perfection. But progress, it's just. And the sad thing is that most people don't even want to try. So that's where you get the constant need for validation from the outside of what you're already doing. So you hang around with other people who aren't trying. Yeah, which is why Buddha said one of the most important things about the spiritual life is what he called right companionship. If you're really trying to do something with yourself, hang around with other people who are trying to do something with themselves, not talking about it. Talks, just nonsense. Like, am I willing to sit down for 5 minutes or not? It comes down to that more than it does whether I have a PhD in world religion. But I can't sit still for 5 minutes, Or I don't like my own company. So I'll talk all the time instead. So thank you for coming. The next meeting will be on another Chinese philosopher, Zhang Su. He's pretty incredible. He's a bit like Bodhidharma, but more different. He's different. And then we move on to the first female sage, who has an unpronounceable name. If any of you know how to pronounce it, please tell me, because I haven't figured it out yet. But she was a Christian mystic who was very highly regarded. But of course, the church didn't exactly publicize her because, you have to be a man to be spiritual in the Catholic Church. But she was an amazing woman. And then there's a woman we're going to talk about named Hypatia, who is the only woman who's the head of an actual Greek mystery school. And then we'll talk about this woman Blavatsky, who I already mentioned tonight. So the next talk here will be the first Friday of May. And if you're interested in more of this, type of thing for an hour. It happens every Wednesday night. And there's no real topic. It's like, what do you want to talk about tonight type thing. So it can be anything on these Wednesday ones. There's no list. It's just, okay, what do you guys want to talk about? And it's pretty interesting, you know. Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much for coming out. Oh, I probably went way too long. Yes, I did. Yeah. Sorry for the length of time, but you're free to go anytime. So.